The town of Newark-on-Trent in Nottinghamshire acts as something of a crossroads for the Midlands. Located some 178 kilometres north of London, it is situated roughly halfway between Nottingham to the west and Lincoln to the east. So it's only natural that it's an important railway hub. In 1846, the Midland Railway would pass through the town while constructing their Nottingham to Lincoln main line. They built a station, Newark Castle, on the bank of the River Trent. In 1852, the Great Northern Railway would also build through the town, creating part of the line that today we call the East Coast Main Line. Their station would be called Newark Northgate, and just 1 kilometre north of that station, the Midland and Great Northern lines would meet at a flat crossing. Just 3 months after it opened, 2 trains would collide on that flat crossing. 178 years later, that flat crossing is still here today. There are a few significant changes to go over, of course. A branch line south to Melton Mowbray has closed, and a connecting line between the two has also vanished over the years. Today, the connection between the East Coast Main Line and the Castle Line comes via this little curve, which wasn't there historically. Trains, typically either local trains terminating at Newark Northgate, or East Coast Main Line trains going to terminate at Lincoln, use this curve via Platform 3 at Newark. But overall, it is kind of impressive of how little this area has changed over the century. But obviously, that does mean there are some interesting operational problems to deal with, and because I think there are some creative solutions to discuss, let's have a look at Newark today and see what we can do. First, Newark Northgate and the flat crossing. How do they keep this crossing safe from potential collisions? After all, getting sideswiped by an Azuma on this crossing is not on my railfan wish list. For East Coast mainline trains, this crossing is kind of simple. As long as the crossing is clear, then trains can proceed. For Castle Line trains, however, in order to cross, then 2 whole blocks on the East Coast main line need to be clear. As you can imagine, this is quite the capacity constraint for both lines. The obvious solution here is to build a bridge or viaduct. I am going to be assuming that these structures will require at least 400 metres so that the trains can get enough height to clear whatever obstacle is underneath them. As you can see here, while you do need to keep in mind the River Trent, there should be enough space to clear the East Coast main line easily. But then what do we do about the spur to Newark Northgate? I think I have an idea. On at least the east side of the bridge, this viaduct will actually be in 2 with 1 track each. That will enable the Newark spur to emerge in between the 2 viaducts at ground level. The advantage of this is that it allows trains coming in from Newark Northgate to enter the Castle Line without getting in the way of trains heading towards Nottingham. It's a small thing, but this kind of grade separation should improve the efficiency of this branch a lot. And just to touch on it, I am keeping the Newark branch single track. Most trains will be terminating here, and it's only 1 kilometre, so there shouldn't be much of a capacity constraint. With that said, I think this is a good opportunity to look at Newark Northgate itself. At the moment, the use of Platform 3 is quite infrequent, with local trains only really coming here to fill in the gaps when the 5 times a day LNER train isn't. As part of increasing the frequency of trains on the Newark to Cleethorpes line, Newark Northgate should become a valuable place to terminate local trains, and there's a few ways we can do that. This is what the station layout looks like today, and this is what I think it should be. Adding a Platform 4 should increase the flexibility of service here, enabling, for example, an intercity train to come into the platform at the exact same time that a local train is ready to depart. To the south of the station is plenty of space where we can put in some proper sidings. The purpose of this is so that local trains which terminate at Newark Northgate can shunt out of the way and wait for their return journey without getting in the way of the platforms. At present, terminating trains at Newark Northgate have to wait on Platform 3 itself, which does impact capacity quite a bit. But here's the most interesting quirk of this layout. Britain is a country where trains run on the left by default. However, at platforms 3 and 4 here, I'm going to have trains run on the right instead. This is in order to enable a cross-platform interchange between platform 3 and platform 2, where southbound East Coast mainline trains will stop. This is an arrangement that exists today, and I'm just preserving it in this new layout, since it is the most common and useful transfer that will be made within this station. Finally, we are building an east entrance here as well, which platform 4 will directly lead out of. To the east of the station is mostly industrial land, but there are some residential properties a bit further out that will benefit from this entrance. Plus, this entrance would be a good staging ground for potential transit-oriented development. It is narrow, for example, but you could fit something into these mostly disused sidings, for example. Also, this car park. If you want to park here, then you need to climb up onto the bridge and walk round to the western entrance of the station. I did not even know that this existed before I began making this video. For the good of everyone in Newark, just build several stories of flats on this land. Right, that's Newark Northgate sorted, but what about Castle? Well, anyone who's been to Newark probably knows what I'm going to say. This road's crossing. In a vacuum, it doesn't seem so bad. Until you notice that it's basically the only way to get into Newark from the north. Are you commuting to Newark from Mansfield? Well, I hope those barriers aren't down. Even Google Street View catches a backup. I think the solution here is obvious. We need to pull a Melbourne and grade separate this crossing. In case you're not aware, Melbourne, Australia has a quite successful program to remove as many of its level crossings as possible. Although this did kind of begin as a political pork barrel promise, it has proven to be quite popular in terms of it being that rare transport policy that both drivers and train riders alike enjoy. And I think there are a lot of lessons learned there that can apply here. So, once again, we're elevating this line onto a viaduct. On the eastern side, our 400 metre rule maybe is going a bit tight when it comes to being able to duck underneath the A46 in time, but hopefully should be possible. From there, while making sure to preserve the lovely old station building and signal box, Newark Northgate should become an elevated station, one that hopefully can give some good views of the castle that it's named after. And hopefully that will improve traffic congestion much better than expanding the A46 will. And to acknowledge some things, I think the idea of putting railways on viaducts in such a small town probably will be controversial at first. So I think any project here should, first and foremost, emphasise the benefits to drivers just as much as it is to train passengers. I think there is a lesson to be learnt from the branding of the level crossing removal project. Yes, such a project does improve train frequency, reliability, and passenger amenities. But it also recognises that most people just like the fact that they don't have to wait at train barriers anymore. Hence the name, Level Crossing Removal Project. Just keep that kind of thing in mind when you're trying to figure out how to sell railway projects to places that are not the Tokyo metropolitan area. Okay, there's one more thing we need to cover with Newark Castle, and that's what to do with trains that currently terminate there. At present, trains terminating at Newark Castle, such as the local from Crewe, drop off their passengers at platform 2, go forward a bit, and then reverse into platform 1 to restart their journey. That's obviously not great for keeping the line clear. And there's actually another issue with this station as well. The trek from Newark Castle to Newark Northgate is quite long, about 1.3 kilometres via the most obvious route. While the need to transfer straight from Newark Northgate to Castle is kind of niche, one that can be mostly addressed by improving service elsewhere, it would still be nice to connect the stations in some way. So can we improve the terminating situation at Newark Castle at the same time as the game between the two stations problem? Well, hear me out on this one. Remember that old connecting line? Well, what if, as a branch from that Newark Castle viaduct, we retraced the path of that line, going along this curve across the River Trent? And then, instead of turning north, we turned south, cutting across this retail park and ending with 2 new elevated platforms above what is now Newark Northgate's car park. Okay, yeah, that is quite the project, so let's talk about the problems with it first. This branch starts where I'm proposing the down ramp of a viaduct, so finding a way for the branch to come off the main line might actually be a bit tricky. It then runs along a route that contains some quite dense vegetation. That isn't a barrier to construction in of itself, but it does raise some public acceptance issues. Such a project might turn out to be good for long-term conservation, but will people accept tearing down this area in the short term for construction? And finally, on the other side, the route is mostly clear if you don't mind acquiring some commercial properties and building through them. That is, except for this one house. This one house seems perfectly designed to make constructing this link difficult. You could build round it, but it definitely makes the line a lot curvier. And finally, space is tight for new platforms at Newark Northgate. While building directly over the car park probably is plausible, this is actually quite a well-used car park space, and so that might lead to short-term disruption during construction. An alternative might be to build the platforms over the tracks like this. So yeah, this is a bit of a complicated idea, and one where the benefits of it maybe aren't immediately obvious. As I said, passengers going from Newark Castle to Newark Northgate and vice versa don't make up a ton of people. So what actually are the benefits? First, this would expand Newark Castle's catchment area quite a bit. Newark Castle is very much located on the edge of town, and Northgate is much more centrally located compared to where people live. For people wanting to go to Nottingham, going to Northgate will be a lot easier than going to Castle a lot of the time. And overall, would be good for enhancing the public transport connection between the two settlements. The second is operational simplicity. Remember, trains terminating at Newark Castle have to stop on the main line to turn around, and that's not great for capacity and reliability. By moving those trains to a dedicated terminating station at Newark Northgate, we can increase the capacity of the entire Castle line. This is not merely a branch that will benefit only trains doing commuter runs to Nottingham. And finally, I think this is an opportunity to rethink some of the town's land use. I think it's easy to forget at present, but this is the town's riverfront. This should be a really pleasant place to live and relax. Instead, it's the site of a retail park. There is this gorgeous old brewery looking over the area, looking like it could be in Liverpool or something. And thinking about improving the mixed-use density of the surrounding area, that, at least to me, feels like a much better use of the land around it. As long as it's done fairly, building a rail line through here could very well be the catalyst needed to do something more economically and socially productive in this area. So that's Newark, a town with an interesting status quo and maybe some even more interesting solutions. I'm curious to hear if any of these ideas made sense to anyone other than me, as I'm sure there are plenty of other good ideas floating around as well. So thanks for watching.